بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا وشفيعنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I would like to start by welcoming you all to the Fiqh of Zakat portion of our Ramadan 2020 workshop. Today, inshallah, we will be covering the Zakat portion of this workshop, and tomorrow, inshallah, will be the Ramadan portion with the Fiqh of Siyam and of fasting, inshallah. Just before we get started, for those of you who may be new to this webinar interface, you have a bar at the bottom of your screen in which you have the ability to ask questions and a chat. That could be used throughout the workshop to ask questions if you have any, and those will come straight to us. Please use the Q&A option for questions, and if you have anything else to say, if there's any issue, for example, with what you are seeing, what you are hearing, then you can use the chat and that will come directly to us as well. The questions you post will be visible to the rest of the attendees. And when you do post a question, you have the option to ask anonymously. A quick background of what we have here today. The Fiqh of Zakat is a course that is offered by Al-Ihsan Educational Foundation under the Department of Ihsan Intensive. This department is relatively a new department, and it focuses on weekend-long intensive courses on different topics. This course is being offered in collaboration with the National Zakat Foundation, Canada, and Ask a Muslim, which works internationally. Myself, my name is Taha Masood. I am a scholar here at Al-Ihsan. I completed my Alimiya program partially here in Canada, and the final years in the UK. I did my Ifta, known as the Mufti course, here in Canada as well, at Al-Ihsan. The agenda we have for today, we will start by a brief question as to what Zakat is, a brief introduction as to what Zakat is, and then there are four main aspects which are necessary to study when studying about Zakat. The first is, who is Zakat obligatory upon? Meaning, as individuals, who are those people who have to pay Zakat? We'll talk about that a bit. The main portion of this is the second and third points. What is Zakat due on, and how do you calculate that Zakat? And then we'll talk about things like cash, jewelry, businesses, investments, everything that a person has in their daily lives on which Zakat could apply. We will talk about that, inshallah ta'ala. And lastly, who could Zakat be given to, who could it not be given to? And we'll finish with, inshallah, if time permits, a Q&A session. As for the questions, if you have questions about what is being explained at that time, then feel free to ask then. Otherwise, we will ask that you keep other general questions about Zakat for our Q&A session. Yesterday, when we sent out the email with the link, we did mention in there that if anyone had questions, they could ask those ahead of time, so that we will give those priority. All the questions that we received about Zakat from those, they will already be answered within our workshop. We received some about giving Zakat to parents, some about investments, RSPs. All that, inshallah, will be covered in our workshop. At the end, if anyone has any additional questions which we did not cover in here, feel free to ask those, and we will answer those, inshallah ta'ala. Getting started. What exactly is Zakat? We as Muslims, some of us may be Muslims our entire lives, some of us may be reverts. In any case, all of us have heard about Zakat, and most of us, in some way or another, have been discharging our Zakat, right? So some people give it on their wealth, on their cash, in different ways. But looking into Zakat itself, lexically, Zakat has a few meanings. Purity, increase, and truthfulness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, addressing Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا, that take the charity, the zakat, from their wealth, through which you will purify them. So zakat, in essence, it purifies our wealth and it purifies our lives. This is why, in general, zakat is considered as the filth of one's wealth that someone needs to remove in order to purify the rest of their wealth. And that leads to the second meaning of increase. Increase, we will look at a few narrations up ahead which talk about how zakat actually increases our wealth. It does not decrease it. Though on the apparent side, that's what it may seem like. We're giving away money. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it such that that money comes back to us multiplied even more in ways we don't even realize. Sometimes it is in the form of being saved from calamities. Something comes up and all of a sudden you have a bill of a few $1,000s. That actually is the barakah of your wealth being removed. Where one day you had the wealth, something came up, you paid that money, and now you don't have it. And nothing else has changed in your life. This is an indication that the barakah of your wealth is missing. So through our discharging of zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves us from such calamities, from such occurrences, and through other ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases our rizq and gives us even more. And like I said, we'll look at a few narrations up ahead. Lastly, the meaning of zakat lexically also refers to truthfulness. Truthfulness from the aspect that a person who is paying zakat, it is an attestment to their faith. Because someone giving their zakat, no one truly knows about whether you have discharged it or not except for you and Allah. Because it is very easy to tell someone, yeah, I paid my zakat. Yeah, I paid it, I'm done. But you truly know, and Allah knows if you have done that or not. So a person who is taking care of this, just like fasting, right? Its essence is sincerity. So in the same way in zakat, sincerity, truthfulness, a person who has this quality, they are the ones who will discharge their zakat. Islamically, you have the technical definition, which it's a bit technical in the wording, but generally what it means is to take a specific type of wealth from specific types of people and give them to specific types of people. And that is the gist of everything we will talk about today in our workshop. One attendee has asked a question, is our camera on? No, your camera is not on. I'm not able to see any of the attendees. For our attendees on Facebook, because this is being streamed live on Facebook, if you want to take part, we're going to have some practice exercises. We're going to ask questions and so on. You can join us at ihsan.ca. Right on the homepage, there's a link to register for the webinar, and you can join us in through there, inshallah. Moving on. A brief look into the history of zakat. Zakat is mentioned at numerous points in the Quran. We read again and again, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ. In different ways, the obligation of zakat is mentioned again and again. The first from these verses, the first to be revealed is the one in Surah Al-Muzammil. And this was revealed in Makkah, in the early stages. In fact, this was, according to most Mufassirin, the third surah of the Quran to be revealed. So we know that the obligation of zakat existed since the Meccan life. Okay, but at that point, it was just a general instruction that pay zakat, give charity. There weren't the specific rulings and commandments about the exact details had not come down yet. And the Sahaba used to ask, they used to ask, what should we spend? We have been commanded to spend and we are ready to spend, but what should we spend? And at that point, the only response that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was قُلِ الْعَفْوِ. Any excess you have, you give that in your charity, in your zakat. Then, after Hijrah, in the second year after Hijrah, Zakat was made fard in the form that we know it today, and the details and the detailed injunctions were given and conveyed to the Sahaba, and that has been carried on up to today. In terms of the foundation of Zakat, so in Sharia, this is a very detailed topic on its own. Just a brief outline on it. We have different types of worships which pertain to different parts of our lives. We have some worships which have to do only with our body, like salat, like fasting. We have some worships that have to do with only our heart, like belief, iman. We have some worships that have to do with our body and our wealth, like Hajj. And we have some worships that have to do only with our wealth, like Zakat. So Zakat is a specific worship in Islam, in Sharia, which has to do only with the monetary obligations requirements. One attendee is asking if we have a break for the Dhuhr Salat. Yes, we will, inshallah, at around 2 o'clock. Now, we do have students attending this workshop from around the world, some in the States, some in the UK, some in Southeast Asia, in Australia, different places. So we can't stop to accommodate for everyone's Salat times, but when we will have 2 breaks during the 3-hour workshop, and during that time, whatever Salat is required, based on your time zone, you can offer that salat, inshallah ta'ala. Someone mentioned the voice is cutting off. Is that still the case? It's fine. Okay, so some are saying it's fine, some are saying it cuts off. So that may be an issue with your connection, because if it was with ours, then it would be an issue for everybody. Just double check, make sure where you are, your Wi-Fi connection is strong. And in any case, if you're experiencing more issues, you can always let us know, inshallah. Some ahadith, verses of the Quran, which talk about zakat. There are dozens and dozens. You pick up the books of hadith, open the chapters of zakat. It goes on and on about the virtues of zakat, the importance of zakat, the warnings for those who don't pay zakat. Just a few that we have here. One narration of Aisha anha, she says that sadaqah, meaning zakat, is never intermingled with any amount of wealth without destroying it and rotting it. ما خالطت زكاة صدقة مالا إلا أهلكته. That any wealth, any sadaqah, zakat that stays in your wealth, which was supposed to be discharged, it's going to be a means of destruction for your wealth. Meaning, like we talked about, through other ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause means for your wealth to go away, for you to be separated and lose that wealth. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, those who recite the book of Allah and establish prayer and spend out of what we have provided for them, secretly and publicly, can expect a profit that will never perish. Another verse of the Quran pointing towards the fact that us giving, spending for the sake of Allah, it is not a loss. Allah has promised that we will profit even more. And another verse of the Quran, that which you give in zakat, seeking Allah's pleasure, then those, they shall receive their wealth increased and multiplied. So again and again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guaranteeing us that you give your zakat, you give your charity, I will give you more. I will give you more than you can even imagine. And on the other side, we have other verses we talk about the warnings of not paying your zakat. In one verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. That those who hoard gold and silver and don't spend it in the path of Allah, don't give it zakat, then tell them about a very severe punishment. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُم وَظُهُورُهُم. On the day of judgment, that same gold and silver will be made into brands with which their bodies, their faces, their foreheads, their sides will be branded and burnt with. And it will be said to them, هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. This is what you used to hoard for yourself. So now taste the recompense, the outcome of that which you used to hoard for yourself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save all of us. So this is just a brief outlook, a brief overview of the different ways Quran and Hadith have talked about zakat. One last point, zakat is not a charity. Zakat is not a tax, sorry. Zakat is a charity. And though it may seem that way because in both cases you have a fixed percentage of wealth you have to give away, that is not the case for zakat. Zakat is a worship. Okay? It is a worship that we get rewarded for. There are specific rules that have to be followed. There is a fixed percentage, not like taxes that change all the time. Zakat is specifically for the needy, to help those in need, whereas taxes are for communities at large. Zakat has specific types of recipients, as we'll talk about, and taxes apply to anyone who is benefiting from the services of the government. Zakat also, as we will talk about, could be sent elsewhere if someone is more in need of that wealth, whereas taxes are for that specific locality, that specific city, municipality, province, or country at most. So some people have this notion that zakat is the same as a tax. That is incorrect. That is not the case. Our first main point, who is Zakat Fardh On? Who are those people that have to pay zakat? There are three conditions. One is to be an adult, to be Muslim, secondly, and to be sane. Adult in Sharia does not mean the adult age that we have in our countries, 18, 19, 21. No. In Sharia, adult means someone who is baligh, who has reached the age of puberty. Okay, which has its own details, generally ranges between the ages of 11, 12 to 15, around there. Muslims, zakat is not paid by non-Muslims. It is paid by Muslims. It is given to Muslims. Another way is that it is different from taxes. Zakat is only for Muslims, and a person must be sane. So, just note that the conditions of being an adult, being reached puberty, and being sane is only placed by the Hanafi school, the Hanafi fiqh. The other three madhahib, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, and Imam Malik, they all say that zakat, even if someone is not an adult and they are not sane, but they have wealth, which reaches what we call the nisab, and we'll talk about that, zakat is still due. So what most scholars of the Ahnaf, of the Hanafi, say is that if there is a child that has wealth, out of precaution, their parents or their guardians can pay zakat for that wealth, but not from the child's wealth. Okay, that wealth, according to Hanafi school, it can't be touched. The parents could pay it out of their own wealth, just as a precaution. Okay, and you'll see this again and again throughout our workshop. In zakat, we always err on the side of precaution. We always do a little bit extra just to make sure we have done enough, because there's a lot of calculations that go on. It is very easy to go wrong somewhere. So we always go on this. We always take the side of caution, just to make sure we are not held responsible for anything on the Day of Judgment. Now, moving on to our main section of calculating zakat. What is zakat due on, or how do we calculate that zakat? And here we're talking about things like the zakat year. What does it mean? What does the zakat year actually mean? The different types of assets of wealth that a person could have, gold, silver, cash, or equivalents. liquid assets, businesses, properties, or investments? And then how do loans and debts play a part in our zakat? How do we calculate any loans or debts that we may have owing to us or owed to others? How do we calculate those into our zakat? Now, starting with the zakat year. Zakat is something that is paid once a year. Okay. There is some difference of opinion in that. I'll mention that at the end of this discussion. Your zakat year starts when your wealth equals nisab. Nisab is the minimum amount of wealth or assets that you have to have in order for zakat to be obligatory on you. Okay, that is what nisab is. And we'll use this term again and again. The nisab for cash, the nisab for this, the nisab for that. So nisab is the minimum amount of wealth you must have in order for zakat to be due on you and on that wealth. Okay, so when we say that zakat is due on wealth that you have had in your possession for 1 year, that means you don't have to have that specific wealth in your possession for 1 year. It means you have to be an owner of nisab at both ends of 1 year. Okay, I will look at some examples up ahead. You have to be an owner of nisab at both ends of the year, even if it fluctuates in the middle. That don't make a difference. Once that year passes and your zakat date comes, you will calculate your zakat and you will pay that zakat. Okay. Now, most people like to fix the date of zakat in Ramadan because it is more virtuous and it is better to do so. Okay, you receive many, many more virtues for that. Like it is mentioned that every fard act that you do in Ramadan is multiplied 27 times. Some ahadith 70 times. So zakat is a fard that you are discharging. So whatever you are giving, you'll get the reward multiplied many, many fold in that. So if someone's zakat date, okay, if someone's zakat date started outside of Ramadan, so now 1 year will be complete outside of Ramadan, it is permissible to give that zakat ahead of time or delay it. I will talk about how you delay it and give it in Ramadan to get that reward. Okay, and when we say 1 year, we mean the lunar year. We mean the lunar year, not the solar year, not the Gregorian calendar. Okay. Now, an example here. Let's say someone's zakat year started in Ramadan. Okay. Before that, they didn't have any wealth and they got $800. I didn't put any currencies here because we have different attendees from different countries. But let's say the nisab is $400, which it is in Canada, more or less, give or take $10, $15. Okay, and a person starts off with $800. Now that they have $800 in savings, okay, this is besides your day-to-day expenses, and we'll talk about that. If you have $800, your zakat year starts. Now, throughout the year, your funds may fluctuate. They may even drop below the amount of nisab. But if your year ends and you are still above nisab, so this is at about $900, you will pay zakat on the amount you have over here. Okay. When your year starts, you have nisab. When your year ends, you have nisab. As long as this condition is fulfilled, that you have nisab at the start and the end, whatever amount you have at the end of the year, as long as it is above nisab, you will pay zakat. So it could be that almost the entire year passed. A few days before your zakat date, you got $500,000, and the next day is your zakat date. Zakat will be due on that 500,000. Okay, so we are not looking at exactly 1 year spent on every piece of cash or wealth or assets that you receive. We are looking at the beginning and the end of your zakat year. As long as both have nisab, you will pay zakat on the amount you have at the end of the year. There's one exception to this. If throughout the year you lose all of your savings and you go into the minus, you're in debt now, or you stay at zero. If you lose all of your savings, then your zakat year is cancelled, and it will restart only once you reach nisab. Okay, so in this case, they started off with 800. When they got to Rabi al-Awwal, they fell below nisab. Then every month, the wealth decreased more and more. And here at around Jumad al-Ula, they lost all their savings. And they stayed in the minus until about halfway through Jumada al-Thani. Then they regained nisab about halfway through Rajab. When they reach this point here of zero, your nisab year will be cancelled, will be reset, and it will be suspended. Once you get back over here at the nisab, your zakat year will start again. Your zakat year will start again, and you will have to wait 1 year from this date in order for zakat to be fard. Okay, so we have a question about this. If you had intended to give zakat in Ramadan to gain more reward, but you found out that the need is urgent at this time before Ramadan, and you gave zakat before Ramadan, would you still get the reward equal to that given in Ramadan? Not exactly. Okay, so Ramadan has its own rewards, but if you are giving zakat in a place where there is a great need, then you will get a separate reward just for that. So it may not be the exact same as the reward of Ramadan. It will be different. It may be more, only Allah knows. But the virtue of Ramadan is specific to Ramadan. Okay. Moving on. So that was about our zakat year. One more point about this, I said I will talk about at the end of the discussion. There's a difference of opinion with some scholars, mainly among the Shafi'i ulama, where they say that zakat is only due on wealth that you have for a full year. Okay, so and generally they calculate those every month. So they will say that here you had $800, so now next Ramadan you will pay $800. Let's use this example. You're 800, next Ramadan you'll pay 800. Here Shawwal you had 1,000. They say next Shawwal you will pay zakat on 1,000. Here it says Dhul Qa'dah you had 600. They say next Dhul Qa'dah you'll pay zakat at 600. So that way they say you have to have the wealth in your possession for 1 full year. Okay, and so they don't pay once a year, they pay it 12 times a year, every month based on what they had 1 year before. But generally, the majority of scholars today, even many of the Shafi'i ulama today, they say that you could just pay it once a year and that will suffice. I have a question. What if you started your year as below nisab and ended above nisab? So that would be something like here, okay, where you didn't have nisab. Once you reach nisab, then your year will start. So when you say your year started below nisab, that's not possible. Your year only starts once you have nisab. Okay. Some attendees, you're raising your hands. If you have a question, just please type it up and send it in. Jazakallah khair. In Shawwal, should we not pay on 200 rather than on 1,000? Because we already paid on 800. Yes, according to the Shafi'i Fiqh, yes, that's how you would do it. I was just saying numbers in general, that if you get that much more wealth in that month, then you pay zakat on that. Otherwise, whatever you haven't paid zakat on during that period, that is what you will pay on, right? You only need to pay zakat on what you have twice. Right? I should have clarified that. Okay. He said zakat will be paid next year. What if you don't have money next year? According to Imam Shafi'i's opinion, I assume you're asking, if you don't have money next year, then you won't pay the zakat. It depends if you lose all your money, like if you go into the negative, then zakat will drop. If you still have some money but not enough to pay the zakat, it will stay due on you and you'll have to pay it afterwards. Okay. Gold and silver. Starting with jewelries. Nisab, okay. Nisab, for those who joined us late, nisab is the minimum amount of wealth which you must have in order for zakat to be fardh on you. Okay, and we're talking about here how to calculate that nisab now. So the nisab of gold is 87.48 grams. The nisab of silver is 612.36 grams. You will find different ulama, different scholars giving slightly different amounts. Some will say that nisab of silver is 595 grams. And some will say the nisab of gold is 86 grams. Okay, this is because of the different ways of calculating. These are based off of a hadith which mentioned dinar and dirhams, which is the currency they used to use in the time of the Sahaba. So it may be better to take those amounts, 595 grams for silver and 86, because like we said, we always take the side of caution. So just to be sure, if someone has, let's say 600 grams of silver, just to be sure that maybe zakat is fardh on me, maybe it is not, you always take the side that maybe it is and you pay the zakat. Okay, so these are the nisabs, the amount of gold and silver you have to have for zakat to be fardh on gold and silver. Now, you will only use the nisab of gold if you only own gold. Meaning you don't have silver, you don't have cash, you don't have other assets, investments, business, and so on. If you only have gold, then you will use the nisab of gold. You will see, do you have what is equal to the value of 87.48 grams? And that is very easy to find. Just open up Google, type in the price of gold today in the country you live in. It'll give it to you in grams. You times that by 87.48. That'll give you an amount. In Canada, it's usually between 2,000 to 3,000. And then you take your jewelry, you go and find out how much it is worth. We'll talk about that next, how to do that. And if the gold and jewelry that you have, if it is more than what 87.48 grams of gold comes out to, you will pay zakat on that. If it is less, then you will not. Just for gold, if you only have gold. If you have any type of mixed assets, you have gold, you have silver, you have cash. Okay, most people have at least these three. Or some have cash and silver, some have just cash. Any other type of asset that you have, if you just have those, or if you have those along with gold as well, then you will use the nisab of jewelry, of silver. Okay, I'll say that again. If you only have gold, no other wealth, you don't have cash, you don't have silver, you don't have a business, you don't have investments, you have nothing. If you only have gold, you will take the nisab of gold. You will find out on that day how much 87.48 grams of gold is worth. Then you will find out how much your jewelry is worth, your gold. If your gold is equal to more than that, let's say, I'm just giving random figures here. Let's say the nisab of gold, 87.48 grams, comes out to $2,500. You go and either weigh your gold. If you weigh it, you see is it more than 87.48 grams. If you're finding out the value of your gold, you'll see is your gold worth more than $2,500 or not. If it is worth less, then no zakat is due. If it is worth more, the zakat is due on all of that gold. That's when you have only gold. If you have silver or any other assets along with gold or without gold, you may have just silver. You may have silver and cash. You may have silver, cash, and gold. You may have gold, silver, and a business. You may have cash, gold, and a business. Any other type of assets you may have. Any other type of assets you may have, you will use the nisab of silver. Okay? And we will do different examples up ahead, and it'll be clarified more. Okay, how exactly we'll see that. Now, there are some questions, I'll get to those in a second. This point here, zakat can be calculated by weight or by value. This is for gold and silver. Okay? If you want to take your gold and silver to a jeweler and have it weighed, you could do that. Okay? If the amount of gold and silver in your jewelry is more than 50%. If it is mixed jewelry, okay, let's say if it's gold, if it's 10 carats, 10 carats is less than 50% because 12 carats gold is 50%. If it's less than 50, zakat won't be due on it. Same thing with silver. But if it's more than 50, if it's 14 carats, 18, 22, 24, and if it's a piece of silver jewelry, which 50% or more is of silver, then zakat will be due on that. To calculate that, you can either get it weighed. If you get it weighed, and let's say the amount of gold in your jewelry is 75%, you will have to pay zakat on the full amount of 100%. Okay? If the amount of gold and silver in your jewelry is more than 50%, you will treat the entirety as though it is gold and silver. The other option is to get the value of that. If you don't want to pay zakat on, say, the other 25%, which is not actually gold or silver, you can go to a jeweler, ask them what the value of that jewelry is, what the retail price is, and you will pay zakat on that amount. Stones and gems, diamonds, rubies, platinum rings, anything else, zakat is not due on that. only on gold and silver. Okay. A couple of questions. So Zakat, what is value of jewelry like after deduction, making, and waste? I don't understand the question. If you could please clarify. Another question. Does this include sterling silver? Yes, silver is silver. If it's worth, gold is worth more than, if it's worth more gold, do you manage the threshold 87.48? No, you don't. Let's say you have 100 grams of gold, Zakat is due on the full 100 grams, not on just the excess of 87.48. Okay, Zakat is due on the full amount. So this is the Zakat of gold and silver. To recap again in brief, if you have only gold, use the nisab of gold. If you have any other types of assets, use the nisab of silver. Okay, you will find out how much the value of silver is in your country on that day, multiplied by 612.36 or by 595, and see the assets that you have, the money that you have, is it equal to more than the nisab of that day or not? If it is, you will pay zakat on the full amount. If not, you won't pay zakat. Okay. Okay, another couple of questions here. What is the requirement of the assets owned? House, jewelry, is there zakat on the amount of jewelry? Okay, that's what we just talked about. Do you still qualify for zakat when you have multiple loans, like student loans, debt? We're going to talk about debts and all of that, inshallah ta'ala. So that was about gold and silver. The part of zakat that applies to almost everyone is cash. Okay, the amount of cash you have, you will see, is that equal to the nisab of silver? Remember, like we said, besides gold, for everything you use the nisab of silver. So you will see how much cash you have in your savings at both ends of your zakat year. If you have above the nisab of silver, which in Canada, it comes out to around $400. Okay, but it fluctuates every day. So if you have more than that amount in your savings at both ends of your zakat year, you will have to pay zakat on that amount. Okay, and again here, if you own gold, silver, and cash, or if it's just gold and cash, or if it's just silver and cash, or if it's gold and silver, any combination besides only gold, calculate the combined value of all three and pay 2.5% of the total value in zakat. Okay, so 2.5%, this is how much zakat is due on our assets. Okay. The only time where there are a different percentage is due is in the case of animals and in the case of vegetation. For the sake of this workshop, we will not be going into those because these aren't that common in our countries. If someone does have specific questions about that, you can send those to us, and we will get back to you personally on a one-on-one basis, and we can help you with that, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, a couple of questions here. With mixed assets, your payout could be less than if you only own gold, correct? Yes, that is correct. Gold has many carats, the 87.4 grams, which carat? So the 87.4 doesn't have to do with the carats. Okay, 87.48. 87.48 is based on the weight of your gold. So yes, the more carat your gold is, the more it will weigh. But you have to see that with all the gold you have combined, if you're using the method of weighing it and not valuing it, if you're weighing it, then you'll see, is it worth more than the 87.48 grams of gold is worth. Or you'll just see, is the weight of your gold more than 87.48 grams. You don't even have to look at the value in that case if you're weighing it. If your gold weighs more than that much, the 87.48, then you pay zakat on your entire amount of gold that you have. Is there zakat on RSPs? We're going to talk about that, inshallah. How about personal use jewelry? Okay, good question. So, according to the Hanafi fiqh and the Maliki fiqh, zakat is due on personal jewelry as well. Okay, because in general, zakat is due on what we call productive wealth. Productive wealth means that wealth that increases, malun nami, that we call it in Sharia. And sometimes that productivity of the wealth will be an intrinsic quality of the wealth. That it may not be increasing physically, like animals reproduce and crops grow or so on, but Sharia has made that an intrinsic quality of the wealth. So in gold and silver, productivity is an intrinsic value. So we say that zakat is due on gold and silver. And today, the majority of scholars, even large foundations like the National Zakat Foundations or Islamic Relief and others, they all agree that zakat is due on personal use jewelry as well. So to err on the side of precaution, you should give that zakat as well. It is better to do that. Okay. An example. Someone has this type of assets. In their bank account, they have $2,400. At home, they have $2,100. They got their gold valued from a jeweler. They were told it's equal to $1,100. And they got their silver valued, and they were told by the jeweler it's worth $350. I want you to take 2 minutes and think about, based on what we've talked about so far, how would you calculate zakat on this? Take 2 minutes and then we will go over it together. If you want, you can calculate it with the calculator and then see if your answer is the same as what we will come up with together. Will I be emailing you the transcript? Not the transcript, I will email you the slides. Yes. I don't have a transcript for this, I'm just talking. Okay, take another minute and then we'll go through this. Again, for our Facebook attendees, if you want to take part in the discussion, ask questions, and so on, just go to ihsan.ca. On the main page, we've added a link there. You can join right in, and you can take part with us. Okay, let's look at this. So, in this case, what we have to do is we have to add up all of these figures and then calculate 2.5% of that. So that's what we have done here. The total value, all four of these assets are zakatable. Zakatable is a term you will see again and again. It means zakat is due on it. Okay, that is the total amount, and then 2.5% of that amount, which is $148.75. Some of you got that, you just sent it to me. Good job. All right, so this was a very simple problem. We're going to do many more complicated ones ahead, but this is just to give you a general idea, make sure you're on the right track, you're keeping up with what we are doing. what we are studying here. In this case, everything they had was zakatable. You add it up, multiply it by 2.5 and 2.5%, not 2.5, and you will get your answer. Right. So in this case, what they have 5950, because it is above the nisab, zakat is due on this. This is the amount of zakat that they would pay. The question we have: so to calculate the value of gold, if you know the weight of gold already, one just need to look up at the internet and find the price of gold and multiply the price with the weight of the jewelry and gold, right? Yes, correct. Okay. Brother Muhammad Khan, I see your two questions that you sent in the beginning. I haven't been able to read through them yet because they're a bit lengthy. I will address them in the Q&A session, inshallah, if we don't already cover those topics during the workshop, inshallah. Right? But I do see them. I don't have an answer to you yet, but I will get to those, inshallah. Okay, so now we talked about gold, silver, and cash. No question, how we take silver as nisab if mixed assets taking different. Sorry, I don't understand the question. If you could ask it again. How we take silver as nisab. I think you're asking about how to calculate the nisab of silver. So you'll see the price of silver on that day in your country, multiplied by 595 or 612.36, and you'll see if your assets are worth more than that. Okay, debts. In general, a debt is something that you could deduct from your total amount of wealth, and you'll pay zakat on the difference. Not on the difference, sorry, on the remaining amount. Okay, so you have different types of debts. Here you have three debts that you could deduct, that you are allowed to deduct from your total assets. The first is a short-term debt. That's what this first one is talking about. Short-term in Sharia, it means within 1 lunar year. Okay, 1 year. If you have a debt that is owed, you have to pay someone back for something within that 1 year, you could deduct that amount from your total wealth and you could pay that zakat. So in the previous example here, if you had, say, a debt of $2,000, you could deduct that and you would pay zakat on $3,950, not $5,950. And we're going to do more examples ahead with debts in there. If it is a long-term debt, it could be payments for a house. It could be payments for a car that is being financed. If you're leasing a car, that is as though you are renting it from the owner, from the dealer or the bank, that those payments are not deductible. Okay, if you're financing it to own it, so in that case you have a debt. Or if in the case of like for a house, you cannot deduct the full amount of the loan. Okay, because if you do that, let's say if it's a house and you owe $800,000, you're not going to pay zakat your whole life. You can only deduct 1 year of that wealth. So the payments that you owe for 1 year, so 12 payments, that is what you could deduct. Okay, and some ulama, they are more strict in this. They say you can only deduct what you owe in that month. So if someone is very well off and it doesn't make a big difference to them, it is better to just deduct the payment of that month. Okay, but for most people, it will make a big difference. So you could deduct what you owe throughout the entire year. Any other bills, penalties that you have owing? For example, you got some speeding tickets. You owe $400 or $500 there. You got some penalties, some fines for something else. If they are due in that year, you could deduct them. Okay. So these are the three types of debts that you could deduct. Short term, within 1 year. Long term, you can only deduct what is due within 1 year, or other penalties or fines that you may owe. Just to clarify, debts due to purchase financing of a car can be deducted. Yes, for up to 12 payments, not the full amount. Could you give examples of payments towards your house? Yes, we're going to do that. Usually part of it goes to your principal and part to the interest. I was going to talk about the interest up ahead, but so we're not here to discuss about the permissibility of a mortgage or not. Okay, an interest-based mortgage. That's the whole topic on its own. Generally, it is not generally. It is not permissible. Okay, if someone does have it, the amount you will deduct will only be the capital. Any impermissible wealth you have or that you are owing could not be deducted from your zakat. Can I say that again? If you owe interest as part of your house mortgage, and usually in the first few years, it's mainly just interest that you're paying. So you have to find out exactly how much of interest you're paying, how much capital you're paying. You could only deduct the capital. You cannot deduct the interest. Okay, I'm going to mention that again up ahead. Non-deductible debts. Future expenses and bills. So any bills or expenses that are not due for you already in the past or in the current month, what is due in the current month, you could deduct that as well. Okay. Any future bills, future hydro bills, electricity bills, gas bills, utility bills, rent, if you owe rent, right? And a car lease falls under this as well. You're gonna pay, you have payments to pay up ahead in the future. You cannot deduct those from your zakat, from your total assets. Okay, only things that are already due in the past, or if it's a debt, a long-term debt that you already bought something and you owe the payment for it, like a house or financing a car, then you could deduct 12 payments for that. If you are renting or any other upcoming payments, like utility bills or so on, you cannot deduct those from your zakat. Not payable at all in the next 12 months. So a debt that you owe, but it's you have to pay it back in the future, not within 12 months. So you could have something like a student loan, right? Besides the aspect of is it permissible or not, in some cases it is, in some cases it's not. But someone has a student loan, but they don't have to pay it back until 6 months after they finish their studies. At least that's how it is here in Canada. So that could be 4 or 5 years down the road. So you cannot deduct those payments from your wealth, from your total assets. Okay, because it's way in the future, you only deduct what is due now. And up to 1 year if you are actively making payments on that. If it is in the future, past 12 months, you cannot deduct that. And unlawful income, like I mentioned with the brother's question, that if you have anything with interest or so on, those amounts cannot be deducted from your zakat. Only the capital amount could be deducted. Okay, next we're going to talk about loans. I think this is a good time to take a break. It is now 2 o'clock for us here in Vancouver. We could take a break for Dhuhr Salat. And anyone else who has any other salawat based on where you are. Let's come back at 2:20. Okay, so that's about 17 minutes from now, which should be more than enough to pray your salat. And we'll come back there. Just one question before we go. How about credit card debts? Same thing. You could deduct what you are owing, but not any interest. Right? Only deduct what the actual amount you owe, not the interest. Okay, so let's take that break. We'll come back at 2:20 or wherever you are, 16, 17 minutes from now. Right? We'll see you then, inshallah. Okay, let us continue, inshallah ta'ala. A few questions came in during the break. Um, so, about student loan, someone asked that if you are saving up to pay back your student loan, do you have to pay zakat on those savings? Yes, you do. You can't deduct the student loan from that either. Okay. Utility bills, if you lose your job and you're not sure, can you deduct? If they're overdue, then yes, you could deduct. The ones that are upcoming in the future, then no, you cannot deduct those. Right. Do you have to give zakat on an asset that is owned, like a car? I'm going to talk about that, inshallah. Uh, I might just do it now since you asked. Okay, if you didn't pay zakat thinking that it's not due upon you because of the loan or you hit the zero nisab, you have to pay zakat in previous years. Short answer, yes, you do have to backdate. You do have to backdate your zakat, and we're going to talk about that up ahead as well. Zakat on RSP, you have to pay 10. Yes, you will pay on the full amount, but on the new amount. But we're going to talk about RSP. It's not necessarily due on the full amount of the RSP. Okay, that's coming up. Zakat on stocks, different investments, all of that is coming up very soon, inshallah. Okay, so someone asked, do you have to give zakat on an asset that is owned, for example, a car that is paid in full? So zakat, like we said, zakat is only due on savings. Okay, anything you have for your use, for day-to-day use, zakat is not due on that. If you own a house, you own a car, you have a phone, a computer, different valuable items, zakat is not due on any of those. The only item that you use on a day-to-day basis on which zakat is due is gold and silver. Okay, besides that, anything you have for use, zakat is not due on that. Okay. Missed the answer. I'm not sure which question you're talking about. Someone has said I missed the answer. Can you just let me know which question you're talking about that you missed? I'll answer it again, inshallah. Do you owe zakat on income not earned? No, you don't. If you don't have possession, if you don't have the money yet, then no, you don't owe zakat on that. We're going to talk a bit about that in investments, vested versus not vested, and so on. Okay. Moving on. Loans. So we talked about debts. Debts meaning when you owe someone or something money, you could deduct that if it's the correct type. Now loans. If you've given loans to someone or someone owes you money, if someone owes you money, what we call a receivable debt, meaning you are the one who is going to receive it. So this falls into weak and strong debt. Okay, two types of debts here. Weak debt is when you are going to receive money, but it's not in exchange for something. It's not in exchange for something. If that is the case, like if it's wages, it's not in exchange for a physical commodity. Okay, rental income. If someone hasn't paid you rent yet, if you are a woman and you haven't received your mahar, your dowry, or if you're going to receive inheritance but you haven't received it yet, these are all considered weak debts. So these, you do not add this to your assets. Okay, let's say for example you were going to receive $50,000 in inheritance, but you haven't received it yet, but you know you will. You do not have to pay zakat on that 50,000 until you receive it. Okay, same thing with any such debts, which you are going to receive, but it's not in exchange for a loan that you gave out, for example. It's money that is owed to you. So those you will not have to pay zakat on. Okay. And when you do receive that zakat, you won't backdate it either. Let's say it took the process 2 years before you got the inheritance, when you receive it, you don't owe zakat for the past years. Okay, you only zakat, you add it to your assets when you receive it. Some students are raising their hands still. If you have any questions, please just ask it in the question and answer panel. I will answer it from there, inshallah. Okay, a couple of questions here. If you're a housewife and do not work, does your husband pay zakat on your behalf of the gold or silver you own? No. If you are a wife, if you are a woman, or if anyone only has gold and silver, for example, and you don't have any cash, any liquid assets to pay the zakat with that, you are responsible for paying that yourself. Okay, zakat is an obligation, just like salat, for example, it's an individual obligation. Same thing for zakat. However, if out of their kindness, the husband wants to pay it off for you, if they want to pay it off on your behalf, then he could. He could, and your zakat will be discharged. Otherwise, it is an obligation on every individual. Now, this person, if they have gold and silver and they don't have any liquid assets, and no one wants to pay their zakat for them, they need to liquidate that part of that gold and silver, get cash, and then pay the zakat from that. Right? The person at 10,000 RSPs, yeah. So this one we're going to talk about ahead. The RSPs. Do you owe zakat from a settlement check that you received? If you received it and you have it, yes. If you know you're going to receive it, then that falls under this type of weak debt. Then no, it's not. Zakat is not due on it until you receive that check. Next type is a strong debt. Strong debt is a debt that is owed for money that you gave to someone. You gave someone a loan, they haven't paid you back yet. That money that you gave someone, technically it's still yours. You are still the owner of that wealth. So now, you still have to pay zakat on that wealth, not the person who you gave that loan to. This is called a strong debt. Okay? Now here you have the choice. If you want, you could wait until you get the loan back. Then you have to backdate it for every year and pay zakat that is due for every year. Okay, for example, say if the loan was $10,000 you gave someone, and they paid back to you after 5 years. If you want, during those 5 years, you could pay 2.5% every time. And when you do that, on the following year, you will deduct what you already paid. Right? So 2.5% of 10,000 is $250. Right? We're doing that right? Yeah, $250. So on the first year, you will pay $250. The next year, when you calculate the 2.5%, you will calculate it on 9,750 because you already paid 250 of that. Okay, and then every year onwards. If you choose to wait till you get the loan back after 5 years, then you will calculate it, you will backdate it, and you will pay what you would have paid throughout those 5 years. So in the case of a strong debt, you have the choice: pay it every year as you go along, or wait till you receive the loan back. Like if you don't have other money to pay it with, wait till you get it back, and then you can pay the zakat, but you have to backdate it for the past years. In these types of loans, if you have been cheated, for example, and the person is no longer willing to pay back your loan, and you have no proof, the loan wasn't documented, there were no witnesses, there's no way you could prove the loan, and the person is refusing to pay back your loan. In that case, zakat won't be due unless you actually get the loan back. If in the future they have a change of heart, they decide to pay back your loan, then you will pay zakat, you will backdate it and pay it on all of those years. Same thing as if you lose money. You lost some money, you don't know where it is anymore, you don't expect to find it. Zakat is not due. Once you find it, if it is a large enough amount, you will backdate it and pay zakat on the past year. Same thing if your wealth is stolen, for example. If it is stolen, then you will not pay zakat. If it is recovered at a later date, you will backdate it, and you will have to pay zakat on those years that you didn't pay zakat for in the middle. This is for a strong debt. Generally, a loan, to summarize this, if you gave someone a loan, you owe zakat on that money. Okay. Question here, Nisab in Canada, it's around $400 right now, give or take. Okay, another practice problem here. In your bank, you have 8,200. At home, you have 1,500. Gold, you got evaluated, is 3,200. Your silver is 700. You're financing a car. Your monthly payment is 300. You've given a loan to the masjid. They were fundraising. You gave them $2,000. They owe it back to you, and your friend gave you a loan of $1,000. Based on what we have studied so far, I would like you to take a few minutes, try to calculate this, how much zakat will be owed. Take 2-3 minutes, and then we'll go through it together. Another question someone asked about RSP. We're going to talk about RSPs up ahead. Okay, let's look at this example. So you're going to look at the gross assets. How much cash, how much wealth do you have, and then how much can you deduct from it? So our gross assets here were made up of the cash in the bank, the cash at home, the gold, the silver, and the loan given to the masjid. Okay, these 4 items, top 4, and the loan, money that is owed to you. That gave us 15,600. Deductibles, so monthly car finance, you could take 12 payments out of that. So that was 3,600, plus a loan that you owe to your friend, that gave you 4,600. You subtract what you owe from what you have, gives you 11,000. You pay 2.5% of the 11,000, which is 275. Okay, again, we took these 4, the top 4 points, and the loan that gave us the gross assets. Deductibles, money we owe. So we took the car finance, 12 payments, 3,600, plus the 1,000, 4,600. And we subtracted that from our gross assets, gave us 11,000, and 2.5% of 11,000, $275. Another practice. This one is a bit different, incorporating a few other points. So take a few minutes and try to do this one as well, and then we will. After this one, we're going to move on to zakat on, I believe, businesses is next, and then investments, RSPs, and so on. Okay, let's look at this. Further, I got a question. Can I pay zakat on family members? We're going to talk about that later on. When we talk about who zakat, when we talk about who you could give zakat to, we're going to talk about family members. Right? Okay, so over here, we have to find first our gross assets. So that consists of our cash in the bank account, cash at home, gold, silver, and the loan given to the masjid. Okay, which equals 38,500. Deductibles, the mortgage, 1,700 times 12, assuming 1,700 is the full capital, no interest in there. But usually that won't be the case. If there is interest in there, you have to deduct that. And just only the capital is deductible. Any impermissible wealth is not deductible. The lost cash, it won't be taken into the calculation because it is as though it doesn't even exist right now. If you find it later on, then you will count it in. So our deductibles were just the mortgage, 1,700 times 12, which gives us 20,400. You subtract this from your gross assets, 18,100, and you give 2.5% of that, $452.50. Okay. Are there any questions about these calculations? Okay, there's some other questions. What about gold kept for your underage kids for future use and not used by you? Okay, I'll address that in a second. Is zakat applicable on the gold worn in daily use? Yes, it is. If I have 10,003 years and I need to pay zakat every year, if I have 10,003 years and I need to pay zakat every year, not 1 year only. I'm not sure what you mean by this. If I have 10,003 years, but if you have that amount for 3 years, yes, you'll pay zakat every year on what you have. Can you clarify lost cash? So cash that you don't have anymore, you lost it. Right? You got out somewhere and you lost it. You don't have it, and you don't expect to find it anymore. Right? So that it'll be as though it doesn't even exist. You won't take it into your calculations. What do we do with the interest amount from our mortgages? You don't deduct it. You can't deduct it. Only the capital could be deducted. Okay. Zakat on rental property, we're going to talk about that ahead. So gold kept for your underage kids for future use and not used by you. So this would depend on a few things. One, that gold that you have for your children, have you given it to them? If you've given it to the children and it is theirs, it is not yours, you don't use it, it is only theirs, and you are just keeping it safe for them until they grow up, then according to the Hanafi fiqh, zakat won't be due on that because they are children. But like I said, to err on the side of caution, it is better if the parents or the guardians pay zakat for that out of their own wealth, not from that child's wealth. If you just say that I am keeping this for my child, I will give it to them at a later date when they grow up or when they get married or so on, then that money is still in your possession. You have to pay zakat on that every year. If someone takes money from you as a loan and they are paying back to you in form of paying your monthly bills and remaining of the loan, you forgave it. So do you have to backdate that loan? Basically, what you will do in such a case and in other cases is when your zakat date comes, up to once you forgive the loan, then you've gifted it. That means you've gifted it to them. It's their wealth now. Before that, whenever your zakat year comes, you will calculate that loan into it, whatever amount is still owing on it. Right? And if you haven't been doing that, then at that point, when you forgive it, yes, you will backdate the past years and pay that zakat up to the point where you forgave the loan. Okay, let's talk about businesses. There's a hadith in Abu Dawood, that he commanded us to pay the zakat of the wealth we intend to trade. Okay, we intend to use in our business. So, in a business, you will have a few different types of wealth. Some will be zakatable, some will not be. Okay, again, zakatable means zakat is due on that. So, the cash in a business, zakat will be due on that. Cash receivables, meaning if you gave someone a loan, just like on a personal basis, if you give someone a loan, zakat is due on that. Trades receivable, meaning if you sold something to someone and they haven't paid you yet, zakat is due on that amount of funds. Okay, let's say you sold something to a company for $10,000 and they haven't paid you yet, and your zakat date comes. So you will include that 10,000 in your wealth and you will calculate it. Okay, and the main thing in a business is stock and inventory. If you have a business where you keep physical items of some sort, it could be a restaurant, it could be a bookstore, it could be a carpet store, it could be anything. If you are selling items, physical items, zakat is due on all of your inventory, all of your stock. Okay, so when your zakat date comes, you have to evaluate that on the selling price, and you will pay zakat on that. Okay, so to recap, in a business, any cash you have, any loans that are owed to you, any money that is owed to you for something you sold, and on all the inventory that you have to calculate the value of that and pay zakat on all of that. Some assets in a business are not zakatable. Zakat will not be due on those. One is service receivable. If your business is the type where you offer a service, you don't sell products, zakat, and someone owes you money for a service, they haven't paid you yet, and your zakat year comes, you will not have to pay zakat on that amount. Okay? Prepaid expenses, if you pay something ahead of time, let's say you pay your utility or your rent ahead of time, that money is gone now, you will not have to calculate it in your zakat. Even though you paid it for something in the future, but it is no longer in your possession. The money is gone. You do not have to pay zakat on that. Then you have fittings and fixtures and fittings, property, plant, and equipment. Basically, these 2 points, they mean anything, any tools that you have to use to run your business. If you have, for example, a clothing store, the shelves, the packaging, the posters, the cash register, anything you have to run your business, the building, the property, zakat is not due on that. Zakat is only due on the cash that you have, cash that is owed to you, and your merchandise. Okay, and then lastly, you have intangible assets, things like copyrights you've paid for, trademarks, licenses, and so on. You've already paid for that, even though it's for a future amount of time. That money has left your ownership. You've paid for that already. Zakat will not be due on that. Okay. Some other deductibles that you could deduct in a business: outstanding invoices. Outstanding invoices. So if you owe someone else money, say you owe your supplier money or someone else, you could deduct that from your wealth because it is a debt that you owe, just like personally that you owe that. Utility bills, meaning past ones. So current meaning that month, and past one that any past bills that you owe, those can also be deducted, just like you deduct a debt from your wealth. Same thing with taxes, loans, any money you owe, it'll follow the same concept as with your personal wealth where you owe a debt. You will deduct what you owe from your total wealth and you will pay zakat on the rest. Okay. Is zakat payable on cash owned by a charity? Donations? No, it is not, because ownership is a condition for zakat to be due, and a thing like in a charity or a non-profit, no one individual is the owner of that wealth. Okay, so therefore zakat will not be due on that. Now, in a business, how will you calculate what you owe on your merchandise, on your stock? Stock here doesn't mean stocks and shares, stock market. This is talking about the stock, what you have in stock in your business, the merchandise. So as a principle, all stock should be valued at retail price on your zakat anniversary, not at cost price. Okay, what the retail price is for everything you have in your shop, you will take that, calculate the retail price, and pay zakat on that. If there are cases where the retail price is no longer applicable, like if it is dead stock, dead or damaged, okay, meaning it no longer has its value and you can't sell it anymore, then you will pay zakat on what is the value of that damaged stock, damaged merchandise. Because now there is no retail value, you can't sell it, so you will take the value of it, the market value. Same thing with work in process and raw materials. Okay, if you are, for example, building a house to sell, building a house with the intention of selling it, we're going to talk about houses more up ahead. In that case, zakat is due, right? But you will see that if the house isn't finished yet and your zakat anniversary comes, you will see the unfinished product, how much that is valued at, and you'll pay zakat on that. Okay, a couple of questions. Zakat on rental properties, we're going to discuss that inshallah. Zakat on RSP, we're going to talk about that as well inshallah. Okay, a couple of examples that they give you here of how to evaluate zakat. So jeweler, you see the retail price. A restaurant, you look at all your ingredients that you have. Okay, if someone has, for example, a fish and chips restaurant, and they have bags of potatoes, or so on. Anything you have, you will find out the retail price for that, and you will pay zakat on that amount. Same thing with groceries, all the food, vegetables, and properties, if the property is to sell. And again, we're going to talk about that ahead. Okay, so to summarize that, in businesses, zakat is due on the cash you have, the money that is owed to you, and on any merchandise that you have with the intention to sell it. Okay, and intention plays a very big role in merchandise. If you have a clear intention to resell, that is the only time zakat will be due. Okay, the merchandise that you bought, you bought it with the intention to resell it. Or if look at the last one here, clear intention to resell in the future, but lease in the interim. You bought it to sell it, but in the meantime you're leasing it. Zakat is due on that as well. Okay, so as long as you bought it to resell it, zakat is due. If you bought it for personal use, this is merchandise. Okay, I'm talking about merchandise here. If you bought it for personal use, not zakatable. Right? And like I mentioned before, this is where I was going to talk about it. But anything you have for personal use, zakat is not due on that. Okay, you bought it and you weren't sure what you're going to do with it. I might keep it, I might sell it. Zakat is not due on that. A conditional intention. I'm buying it now, and if the value goes up later on, I'm going to sell it. The intention is conditional, zakat is not due. Only when there's a clear intention, you buy merchandise to resell it, then zakat will be due on that. I own a building and is rented out. You have to pay zakat on the building value. We're going to talk about that. Properties. We get a lot of questions about properties. So, zakat on a property, it depends on why you have the property. If it is a residential property, doesn't matter how many there are. If you own 5 houses in 5 different places, and you stay at different ones at different times, zakat is not due on that. A rental property, which most people have been asking about. Zakat is not due on the property itself. The rent that you receive from that property will be added to your own personal wealth, and you will pay zakat on that when your zakat date comes. Okay? Again, rental property, zakat is not due on the property. The rent that you receive will be added to your own wealth, and you will pay zakat on that when your zakat date comes. If you have a property that you bought for residential purposes, or you weren't sure, and now you decide to sell it, you've made that decision, but you're not actively trying to sell it, zakat is not due. Only when you list the house up for sale, and while it is listed, if your zakat date comes, zakat will be due on the listing price. If you bought a house with the intention of selling it, if that's what you do, you flip houses, you buy them, you work on them, make them better, sell them for a profit. In this case, the houses all are your merchandise. So zakat will be due on the listing prices of those houses. Okay. Some ulama, some scholars say that you could take the valued price of the house. So like here in Canada, every year, the city, they send you a letter that tells you what your house evaluation is. So some scholars say you could use that as well and pay zakat based on that. Okay. If you bought a house to sell it, then you decide, no, I'm not going to sell it right now. Again, it will not be zakatable. Okay, so the only case where it's zakatable is when you buy it to sell it, or if you bought it for some other reason and now you decide to sell it. Once you list it, then zakat will be due. Okay, quite a few questions here. You purchased a property, but you haven't got the possession yet. When do you pay zakat? You need to have possession of it. Before that, zakat won't be due. My rental income is spending for family back home. Do I have to pay zakat on this income? You will see when your zakat date comes how much money you have. Whatever you have in your possession, if you already spent all of it, then zakat won't be due. Whatever you have on that date, that will be paid in your zakat. If you listed a house and our zakat date comes, how would we add the amount, though if the house isn't sold and the money isn't received? How would we add the amount, though if the house isn't sold and the money isn't received? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Basically, okay, I think you're saying that you don't have that wealth, so how do you pay the zakat? So basically, you could wait until the house is sold, and then you could pay that amount in zakat. Okay. If house is listed but do not have enough money to pay much zakat on listed, yeah, same thing. So wait till it is sold, and then you could pay that zakat. Rent received in 1 year. Again, you will see how much money you have when your zakat date comes. If you already spent that wealth on something, then zakat will not be paid on it. All right. So that's about properties. Again, to summarize, rental properties, no zakat on the properties. The rent you receive added to your own wealth, pay zakat on that when your zakat date comes, if you still have the wealth. If you bought the house to sell it, or you're actively selling it and your zakat date comes, then zakat will be due on the house. Clear intention, buy and sell. Do I need to pay to the profit or total sale price? Total sale price, not just the profit. Should we deduct rental expenses from rental income? Should we deduct rental expenses from rental income? I'm assuming you mean expenses you have to make on the house. So again, when your zakat date comes, if there's some invoices or something you haven't paid for yet, then you can deduct those. If all has been paid and done, then on that zakat, when your zakat date, you'll see how much money you have, and you will pay zakat on that amount. It's not like the case of taxes, right? We have like tax deductible receipts that, I made this expense, now I can deduct it. No, it's not like that. It's all about, you see when your zakat date comes, how much money you have, you pay zakat on that. I've invested in a business, I get monthly amount. We're going to talk about investments ahead. Right? So this is about houses. Another practice, a bit more, we're getting more and more complicated here. Take a few minutes and look at this. Personal cash, total bank and home 42,000, gold and silver 6,500, business merchandise 40,000, monthly rental income 1,600, monthly mortgage against just the capital. We're assuming this is the full capital. 2,000, loan, overdue invoices, trades receivable, service receivable. See if you calculate the zakat. The question is, so there isn't any zakat on equity of the property then. Like we said, it depends on why you own the property. If it is to resell, then yes, there is zakat. If there's not, then there is not zakat. Even if you own multiple homes and it is you're using them all for residence, or even if they're just sitting there, they're not being rented out, and you're not trying to sell them, zakat won't be due on those houses. Right? Even if it's just to rent, you have multiple properties, no zakat on that. Instead of mortgage, can I add my rent? No, you cannot. Okay, because a rent is not a debt. It's something you pay every month for the use of that property. So you cannot deduct that. Can zakat be paid using money from child tax benefit? Is child tax benefit considered child's property, even though the general receipt of the mother's name? Child tax benefit is the mother's property. So yes, zakat could be paid from that wealth, because it's given to the mother to pay the expenses of the child. Right? Okay, let's look at this example. So we've broken it down here by the colors, because there's quite a few items here. So the gross assets we made up of the cash, gold and silver, business merchandise, the loan you gave to a masjid or to anyone else, and trade receivable. Okay, meaning you sold something, you have a business, and this is how much money is owed to you. You add all that up, you get 81,600. Deductibles. Monthly mortgage, again, we're assuming this is all the capital amount, no interest in there. 3,600 plus overdue invoices you have for your business or personally, 5,400. Those are your deductibles. Subtract 41,400 from 81,600. That gives you 40,200. You pay 2.5% of the 40,200, which is $1,005. Question: utility bill can be deducted. Utility bills only of the current month or the past months, not of upcoming months, could be deducted. Right. Okay, I think we have another problem here. Okay, not yet. Okay, investments. It is now 3 o'clock. I will explain investments and RSPs, and then we'll take a break before the next problem, inshallah. A short break. Investments, don't read this yet, it's just going to confuse you. Listen to what I'm saying first, please. Investments could be of two types. One, that is short term. Okay, and again, remember in Sharia, short term means within 12 months, 12 lunar months. So if you're actively buying and selling stocks, shares in a company, and during that process, your zakat anniversary date comes. Whatever you owe at that time, you will pay zakat on the full amount of that. Okay, so you're actively buying and selling stocks you're buying them for the sake of reselling them. Zakat will be due on that, on the full amount. If it is a long-term investment, you bought the shares for the sake of gaining equity in the company. Okay? You will not have to pay zakat on the full amount of those shares. Because in the first case, where it was a short-term investment, you're buying and selling, those stocks are your merchandise. It's like a business, and stocks are your merchandise. So you owe zakat on the full value of those. But when you buy a stock or a share in a company for the sake of equity, to own a part of that company, your stocks are not merchandise. You now own a part of that company. You only have to pay zakat on those assets that company has to pay zakat on. Whether they are or not, whether they're Muslim or not, that doesn't matter. We're looking at, you only have to pay zakat of a company that you own a part of on what they need to pay zakat on. So for example, this is an example I give often. You own shares in an airline. Okay, let's say Air Canada. Now, Air Canada has a lot of assets. They have cash in their bank accounts. They have loans that are owed to them. They have planes. The majority of their assets is made up of planes. They have properties. They themselves invest in other companies. Now, they only owe zakat on their cash, on their liquid assets, their cash and their loans that are owed to them, the shares that they own ahead, and if they are selling things, like they sell things in their flights or so on, that's their merchandise, they owe zakat on that. But the majority of their portfolio is made up of their planes. That's what's worth the most, in billions. And those are not zakatable. Because for them, the planes are what they use as their tools. So now you as an individual who owns shares in Air Canada, you do not have to pay zakat on the entire amount of your portfolio. What you need to do, what the best way to proceed is if you could get a balance sheet from that company. Some companies give it to you themselves every year. Some you have to request it from HR. In any case, if you could get that document and that outlines all of the assets of the company. Based on that, you can see what cash they have, what cash equivalent. Cash equivalent means anything else like any other liquid assets. Yeah, that's all cash equivalent. Account receivables, loans that are owed to them, and their inventory. And anything else, if they invest in other companies, then that also. Anything that they have to pay zakat on, you take that, calculate the total amount of that, see what the total number of shares that company has issued. Let's say they have 10,000 shares. Okay, so you divide the total number of assets that are zakatable for that company, divided by 10,000, times how many shares you own. This way, you are only paying zakat on what the company has to pay zakat on. You're not paying anything extra. Okay. If you are not able to find out these details of the company, if you're not able to find out the details of the company, of how much of their assets are zakatable. Some companies won't tell you. You will use what we call a proxy. A proxy is a percentage that a group of ulama in the National Zakat Foundation worldwide, they researched hundreds of companies, and they found an average overall that on average, how many of a company's assets are zakatable. And they do this every year to renew it because economies change, different things change. So every year they renew the amount. This year, the amount that they published just last month is of 27%. What that means is the stocks that you own, if you cannot get this information, if you could, that's the better way to go. It'll be more accurate. If you can't get that information, you pay zakat on 27% of those shares. So basically 2.5% of 27% of those shares. And we're going to see an example up ahead. Okay. Now, what many ulama say is that, again, to err on the side of caution. We're saying again and again, always take the more cautious route. If you could, it is better to just pay zakat on the full amount of the share. Okay. If you are well off, if you have many investments, you have a lot of money, and it won't make that much of a difference to you, if you could, it's better just pay zakat on the full amount of your portfolio, whatever the total amount of shares are owned. Okay, and the last scenario, if you could cash out your shares, in that case, after deducting any taxes or fees, you could pay zakat on that. Okay. A couple of questions. Can you pay zakat in advance? Yes, you could. You can pay zakat in advance. Let's say your zakat date is coming up after Ramadan. You want to pay it in the Ramadan. You could pay that. And when the actual zakat date comes, you calculate it again, how much you owed. If you paid less, then you pay the remaining difference. If you paid extra, then that will be sadaqah. Okay. Will email the PowerPoint? Yes. All attendees will receive a copy of the PowerPoint. Right? So if anyone is watching us on Facebook, because this is streaming live as well, and you want a copy of the slides, please go to ihsan.ca and register for the webinar. So we have your email, and we will send you a copy of these slides as well, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so that was investments in general. Okay. RSPs. RSPs in Canada stands for Registered Savings Plan. Okay. Now, I know we have attendees from different countries around the world. In the US, this was the 401k. In the UK, you have different types of pension funds. Different countries call it different names, but in general, the concept is the same. Okay. These funds, RSP, this includes RRSP, includes RESP as well. Okay. The only difference is that RESP, the money belongs to the child, and again, based on the difference of opinion, it may or may not be due from that wealth. If you're following the Hanafi fiqh, then it is not due from that wealth. It is not due from the wealth of the RESP. But again, like we said, if the parents could, they should pay it from their own wealth to err on the side of caution. Now, in general, RSPs, there are many, many specific types. If in this discussion, the specific type you want to know about is not covered, you could get in touch with us afterwards, and inshallah, we will address your question specifically. Right? Because there are so many different types of these, it's not possible to go over all of them. General concepts here. RSPs could be made up of employer contributions and employee contributions. Meaning you're working somewhere, your employer contributes towards your funds every month or every year, and you as an employee, you could be contributing to that as well. There are different types. If it is only employer contributions, it is no employee contributions, and it is not vested. Not vested meaning when the employer puts those funds aside for you, they are not giving you that wealth. It is still theirs. So if you leave that job, they will take it back. In that case, the wealth is not yours. It's not zakatable. Even though nowadays, most RSPs, they are vested. Okay. Now, if it is vested, if it is just the employer contributions, you will go down this chart over here. If there are employee contributions as well, join the employer vested contributions to your own contributions, get a total amount, and then move ahead. Okay? Then you will see one of two things. Do you have access to those funds before retirement or not? Do you have access to those funds before retirement or not? Now, access means that could you deduct it even though you will be charged penalties and taxes? Do you still have the option to do that? In some cases, you can't do that at all. You have to wait till you retire. So if you don't have access, no matter what you do, you can't access those funds. You have to see what is being done with those funds. Are they just sitting there being saved for you? If they are not zakatable throughout your entire lifetime. Until when you retire and you withdraw, now you have access to that funds, you withdraw it, now it will be added to your wealth and you will pay zakat on it. Whether it's given to you as a salary or as a one-time payment, in any case, you will add it and you will pay zakat on that after you retire. Before that, you won't. If the funds are being invested, which is almost always the case, if they are being invested, then that RSP is zakatable. Zakat will be due. Okay. Now, how much zakat will you pay? You will pay on the proxy amount. Talk about the proxy, 27%, because it's being invested, right? Now you own a part of another company, so you won't pay zakat on the full amount of it, just on the proxy. Again, if you could get details of what the exact amount of zakatable assets of that company is, you will do that, and you will pay zakat on that amount. If you can't, use the proxy of 27% minus the taxes and penalties. Okay. Well, in this case, taxes and penalties wouldn't even apply because you can't access it. Okay, so just ignore that. That shouldn't be there actually. Take the proxy amount, and you'll pay zakat on that. Now, you could pay it annually, every year as you go on. That is the better thing to do. Or you could wait until you retire. When you have access to it, then you could pay zakat at that time. You have the option for that. Will the presentation be available as a recording on Facebook? Yes, it'll be on Facebook. Second type, if you have access, meaning you have access through penalties and taxes. In both cases, it will be zakatable, whether they are in savings or they are invested. The only difference is the amount. If it's being kept for you in savings, you will pay zakat on the full amount minus taxes and penalties. If it is being invested ahead, then you will pay on the proxy amount minus taxes and penalties. Okay. If I pay at the withdrawal, will it be backdated? It depends what type it is. Okay. If it's this type where there was no access and it was a savings, then you won't backdate. Any other type, you will backdate. But in this case, it's due annually. You should pay it annually. You have to pay it annually. If you don't, then it'll be considered zakat that you're owing, and you have to backdate it. Whatever you do, decide to pay. The only case where you are allowed to defer it is in this one over here, where you don't have access and the funds are being invested. Then you could wait until sorry about that. Right, so only in this type you could wait until you withdraw it at retirement, and then you could pay zakat at that time. Okay, so this is a chart you could use to calculate your zakat and RSPs. Like I said, there are other specific types of RSPs that people have that might not fall under this. If you do have that case, then get in touch with us. Get in touch with National Zakat Foundation. We can help you with that, inshallah. Do we have to deduct 10% government tax on RSPs? Yes. The tax amount is deductible. The tax and the penalty. Whatever. So like, meaning if you were, so in the case where you have access, if you were to withdraw it, you don't have to withdraw it. If you were to withdraw it, how much taxes and penalties how much in taxes and penalties you would have to pay, you could deduct that and the rest of the amount will be zakatable. Either the full amount if it's in savings, or the proxy amount if it's being invested. The difference between access and no access, meaning if you want, could you withdraw it before retirement? If you could, that means you have access. And if you can't, then no. Okay, a couple other questions here. What about car insurance? Is it deductible or not? If you're paying your car insurance on a monthly payment, which by the way should be avoided because they charge you interest, the capital amount of that month or of the previous month could be deducted, not of upcoming months. Okay. So if I own 100,000 through pension plan but not retiring anytime soon, do I pay zakat on 27% of that amount? Again, it depends what type of pension it is. Right, so just go through the chart, see which one your RSP falls under in your pension plan, and based on that, if it is invested, then yes, you will pay zakat on 27%, meaning you'll calculate 2.5% of the 27%. Right. The next break will be now. What time we finish? It is scheduled to finish at 4 o'clock, and we're on track to finish around that time, inshallah. Okay. So let's take another break here, and then we will come back and we'll do another. I think we have two here. I have two more practice problems for you here. I'll put it up now. You can start working on it if you want, and see how much zakat is due here. For the sake of these problems, we're going to use the proxy 27% because they're hypothetical investments. We don't know the exact amounts. Right? And then for RSP, I've given you the type, access and its savings. Right? So in this case, because you can't see the chart, in this case, when there's access and it's in savings, it is due on the full amount. So if you want, you can work on this. Let's take a little break, and we'll come back. Short break, 5-7 minutes. Let's come back at 3:25, inshallah. Right. So that's 7 minutes break for us. Based on your time zone, you could take that break. All right. There's a couple of questions again. I'll address those after the break, inshallah. Okay, let's say you already did your calculations for your personal, you took out your debts, and that was 11,000. Sorry, there's some issue with the system. Okay, then for your business, you did the same. 32,000. After taking out your debts, that's how much you owed. Your zakat was for your business. Then you took the sum of your equity investments, your shares that you own, and so on, 7,500. Your RRSP, which you have access to and was in savings, was 8,400. And your RESP, let's say you're paying zakat on it for your child, and it was invested. So what will we do in this case? For personal, the entire amount is zakatable. Business, the entire amount. The investments, 27%, which equals 2025 is zakatable. RRSP, because it's in access and it's in savings, the full amount. And RESP, it's invested, so 27%. So you add these up, that gives your gross assets of 64,300. Sorry, you add these up to 64,000. You add these ones up the side, that gives you 54,883, and your zakat is due on this amount, 2.5%, which equals 1,372. I know I'm going through these a bit quickly, but once you receive these in your email, you could break them down and think about each point one by one. And at that point, if you have any further questions, you can always get in touch with us. Some more questions coming in. I'll keep that for the end. What about CRA RRSP? Okay, so the CRA RRSP, that is it's considered what we call a state pension. So meaning when you, if that's what you're asking about, when you receive a paycheck, there's a deduction for CPP. It is in Canada, Canadian Pension Plan. So that money, it never comes into your possession. That goes straight to the government. So zakat is not due on any of that. Okay. If I own RSP and RESP, are they being invested in mutual funds? Do I pay 2.5 and 27% of the total amount since I will not have access to those monies until retirement? You don't have access, but it's being invested, then yes, you owe 2.5% of 27% of that. Okay, the other questions are general. I will address them at the end. The question is 7,000 the RSP one for that year. Yes, it was in the previous example. It was for that year. Well, or is it the total amount you have? It's the total amount. Every year it adds more, is added on to it. So every year you have to pay zakat on the total amount, not on the excess that was added. Okay, because just like you own wealth, every year you don't pay zakat on what money you gained. You pay it on your total amount again. Okay. If I owe money to my RSP, HBP, home buyer's plan, is that deductible? I'll need more details of the exact of that exact transaction, but generally, if you owe money like that, yes, it would be deductible. Okay. Okay. So that concludes our section of what zakat is due on and how to calculate it. Okay, like I said again, once you receive the slides in your email, if there's anything you're not completely confident you understood it completely with, go through the slides. If you want, go through the recording. And if you still have questions, you can always get in touch with us. When I send out this email, I will send you the different ways you could, the different venues you could use to get in touch with us, by phone, by email, etc. Right. What is my name? My name is Taha Masood. Okay, so we talked about who is Zakat Fardh On. We talked about what is Zakat Fardh On. We talked about how to calculate that zakat. The last point, how do you discharge, how do you pay that zakat? And we will conclude with this, inshallah. The first most important thing when you are giving your zakat is your intention. Famous hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are based upon their intentions. So you must have the intention of paying zakat when you're discharging that wealth. This could be at one of two times. Either when you are giving that wealth to the recipient, whether it be a person or an organization. Or if, let's say your zakat date is coming ahead after Ramadan and you want to get the reward of the Ramadan, you could take that amount of wealth and put it aside. You can put it aside for the rest of your money and say that this money I'm putting aside is for zakat. That way you get the reward for giving zakat in Ramadan, but you must have that intention when you do that. Okay. A couple other points about intention. If you're giving zakat to someone and you don't want them to know that it is zakat, because they won't take it, because they don't want to take zakat funds, you don't have to tell them it is zakat. You can say it is a gift. Okay? As long as you have the intention for zakat, it will be discharged. Just keep that in mind. Who can receive zakat? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran outlines for us 8 types of people. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. First is the poor and the needy. These are the most common ones. So you don't have to tell the person receiving money that is for zakat purposes. No, you don't. As long as you have the intention, that suffices. Okay. The poor and the needy, there are different interpretations of these. Some say that poor means someone who has enough for their daily expenses, but their wealth is below nisab. They don't have any savings equal to nisab. And they say that the needy means someone who has nothing at all. Okay, someone who is homeless, they have nothing. And some say it's vice versa. In any case, both types of people could receive zakat. Okay. Then you have those employed. I'm going to talk about these a bit more when I go through these 8 quickly. Those employed to administer zakat. This is in Muslim countries where someone is sent out to collect zakat funds from everyone, from businesses, from people. Then that money is put into what they call the Baytul Mal, the public fund, and then they are paid. These people who went out to collect the funds, they could be paid from those zakat funds. Okay. For those whose hearts need to be softened, this one is currently suspended. Okay, in the time of Umar, by the consensus of the Sahaba, this zakat can no longer be given for this purpose, because this was permitted in the beginning to help give strength to Islam when Islam was just starting out. But once Islam gained that strength, and it still has that to today, alhamdulillah, these types of people can no longer receive zakat. I won't go into more detail of these because it doesn't apply to us anymore. Those in slavery, if there's a slave, generally slaves can't receive wealth, but if it is a slave who has been permitted to work to pay off their slavery, by their freedom, then you could give zakat to the owner of that slave, who will apply those funds towards that slave. Those in debt, someone who has nisab, someone who has wealth, but they are in debt, and their debt overpowers how much money they have. For example, someone has 5,000 in savings, but the debt they owe is 10,000. So they could receive zakat funds, as long as after you deduct the amount of the debt from their savings, if what they have is below nisab, they could receive zakat. Okay, so if they had, for example, 5,000 again, and you deduct their debt is 3,000, so the difference is 2,000. That's still above nisab, so they can't receive zakat. Okay. In the way of Allah and the traveler, the way of Allah refers to someone who has gone out in Hajj or in Jihad or in Tabligh, in anything which is considered the path of Allah, and while they are gone, they lose all their funds, or they spend all of it, and they have money back at home, but they don't have access to it. So they could just give zakat where they are. Same thing with the traveler. They have money at home, but where they are traveling, they run out of money. They have no more money. They could receive zakat funds. The main ones that apply to us is the poor, the needy, and those in debt. Okay, and in brief, I want to mention this a very detailed point, that someone who is poor, if you take the opinion that it means someone who has enough for the day-to-day expenses, but they don't have savings. Okay, this would be someone who lives an overall simple life. They live a simple life, meaning they have enough for their necessities. They may even own a house. Maybe they got it through inheritance. They own a car, a basic car. They have a phone. They have everything you need for your day-to-day expenses of day-to-day life, but they don't have any savings. They're living hand to mouth. These people can receive zakat. If someone is in this category, but they have a very lavish lifestyle, full of luxuries, they have every room in their house has an 80-inch TV, they have the latest phones, they have the most expensive cars, and they say that I don't have any savings, you say no, they can't receive zakat funds. If they're living that type of lifestyle and they don't have savings or enough for their expenses, they need to get rid of some of what they have and use that for their expenses. Okay, the poor, it's considered someone who is living hand to mouth over time, and they lose their job, for example. Okay, now they don't have enough to make up for their expenses, you could give them zakat. It needs to be someone who is genuinely in need, not someone who has all sorts of different wealth and they say that I don't have savings, give me zakat. No, someone who is genuinely in need. Okay, a couple of questions that came in here. Zakat to another country, we're going to talk about that ahead. Even if this person owes me, can I pay zakat to him? If this person owes me, can you pay zakat? Yes, you could. But it is better not to. Because the idea in zakat is that you should not benefit from your zakat wealth in any way. Okay, so if you're going to give that person your zakat wealth and they're going to pay you back with that same wealth, that should be avoided. Okay, if it can be done in some way where you give them that money, they use that for something else, and then they pay you back, that would be a better way to go. Okay, regarding the poor, if they have gold, as usually wives have, if you have gold, you're not poor. If they have gold and they say, give me the card, I don't have enough for my expenses, you tell them to sell their gold and make up for their expenses. Right? This is about family. We'll talk about that at the end as well. Okay. Right here, family. Who could not receive zakat? We said who could you give it to? Now within these types of people, who could not receive it? Parents, grandparents, and so on. Father, mother side, both. You cannot give them zakat. Children, sons, daughters, and so on. You cannot give them zakat. Spouses, husband to wife, wife to husband. You cannot give them zakat. There is some difference of opinions in regards to spouses, generally because one or the other will benefit from that wealth back on the other, right? Like for example, if the wife gives zakat to the husband, if he spends that back on her, or in general, it should not be given to husband and wives, to your spouses. If parents are needy, you can't give them zakat. You could give them charity, give them sadaqah, but your zakat that is due, you cannot give it to your parents. A brother and sister, yes, you could. Brother, sister, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, cousins, you could give them zakat. Just about direct ascendants and descendants and spouses. Okay. Here there was a question: can I pay zakat on family members' debt they owe to credit card company? What if they use the credit card for haram purposes? So you could pay zakat towards the capital amount. Okay, not for the interest on there. What their debt is in lieu of, that you're not responsible for that. If they have a debt, you could give them zakat, but again, not for the amount of the interest that they owe. Okay. The rest are general questions. I'll keep them for the end. Family of the Prophet ﷺ. So what we call Sayyids, Sadat. So those who are from the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, but it's not everyone. It's not everyone from his extended family. Ahadith have told us from 5 families. Okay, the family of Abbas, Harith, Ali, Jafar, and Aqil. I won't go into detail of who these are, where they come into place. Some of these are possibly cousins, some are uncles, and so on. But if someone says they are a Sayyid and you want to give them zakat, today too, yes, same thing, today as well. If someone says they are a Sayyid, ask them if they have their lineage and what family they are from. Okay? If they're from one of these 5, they can receive zakat. If they're from a different family, then they could receive zakat. Okay? And lastly, non-Muslims, like we said, zakat is only given to Muslims. Besides this, you cannot give zakat. Hashimi, same thing. That's what we're talking about. Hashimi Sayyids, that's the same idea. This provides. Okay, this is a long one. We're going to talk about some of this in here. So, masjids or Islamic institutes, you cannot give them zakat for their expenses. Okay, whether it is to build an institute or a masjid, whether it is for their salary, for their overhead, you cannot give them zakat. Because, as it says here, transfer of ownership is the most important condition in order for your zakat to be discharged. Okay, so you can't give zakat for a masjid, for its construction, for its expenses, for Islamic institute. You can't give that. But masjids who take zakat, they don't take it for their own expenses. They take it to give it onwards to other people who are in need. That is fine. Islamic institutes like Al-Ihsan, our institute, we take zakat funds, but not for our expenses. We take it on behalf of those of our students who cannot pay their fees, who are eligible to receive zakat. They authorize us to receive zakat on their behalf, and then we use those funds to make up for their fees. But in principle, that money is going to the student. Okay. Other public projects, water pumps, wells, even if it's for a good cause, it has to be given to an individual. Okay. If you're giving it to a charity, the money you're giving to a charity, 100% of that needs to go towards someone who is in need. Okay. They cannot use those funds for their own expenses. And generally, all charities, they know this. They have separate pools, and they use other funds for their own expenses. Okay. A few questions came in here. Can we pay poor children tuition fees? Yes, as long as they're Muslim. I have 500 grams. Okay, that's a general question at the end. What if a Sayyid is poor? Then they can't receive zakat still. You can give them sadaqah. Zakat permissible for construction of masjid? I said that no. Can we permissible to receive a tax deductible receipt? Okay, a tax deductible receipt for zakat, yes, you could receive it, but like we said, it is the principle in zakat is that you should not benefit from your zakat wealth. You're giving it, it shouldn't come back to you. In a tax deductible receipt, you get some of that money back. So what you should do in that case, you get the money back, give it in sadaqah again. Get another receipt, give it again. Keep doing that. Right? So from that aspect, it is permissible to get a tax deductible receipt, but you should not keep that wealth. What if giving zakat to building a new masjid? No, you can't do that. It has to go to a person. It can't go into the ownership of an organization. It has to go to a specific person, a human being, who is eligible. So it cannot be given for projects and so on. What if let's say we pay zakat to a charitable organization, we get back a tax deductible receipt, do we have to pay zakat on the tax deductible we receive? Well, if you add it to your wealth, then next time your zakat date comes, if that's part of your wealth, yes, you will pay zakat on that. Daily sadaqah can put toward the mosque. Yes, sadaqah is fine. Sadaqah has much less restrictions. You give sadaqah to anyone. Can we pay to the tutor of a poor person? The teacher? It depends. I can't say generally. It depends on their circumstances, whether they are eligible or not. Okay. Can we use the zakat money to set up a business for a needy person? No. It needs to go to the ownership of a specific person, not for any projects. Okay. Now, where to give your zakat? Question here. Last year I paid zakat to the masjid as per Imam recommendation. Do I have to repay this year? No. So masjid, like I said, masjids that collect zakat, they don't collect it for their own expenses. They collect it because people come to them throughout the year and they give them that zakat fund, those who are eligible. They have a very thorough vetting process to see who is eligible or not, and then they give those zakat funds ahead to them. They don't keep it for their own expenses, so no, you don't have to repay that amount. Okay. Now, there's 3 places you could give your zakat fund. One is locally. And if you look at the ahadith, this is what has been emphasized. Okay, I won't go into the hadith, we're running out of time here. But if there's a need locally, that is the best place to give your zakat. Secondly, relatives. Relatives who are in need in different countries, they could get preference over those locally. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has emphasized a lot, وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى, your relatives. So if they are in need, it is your due first to help them. Okay, then if there's leftover, you give it locally. Lastly, communities, countries, and needs. When calamities arise, okay, things like in the past years, places like Syria, Rohingya, the China concentration camps, in other places where there's a need at that time, people are losing their homes, they're going through famine, going through droughts. Nowadays, COVID-19, right? If there are people who have lost their jobs, they don't have any money. In Canada, we're lucky we get a lot of help from the government. Other places that may not be the case, right? So you see, if they are in need, then it would be more virtuous to send your wealth to those countries, those places. As a rule of thumb, you yourself should assess and see what is going on in the world today. Where do you think the needy will benefit from your wealth the most? Where do you think the needy will benefit from your wealth the most? That's where you give your zakat. And it is your responsibility to make sure zakat is getting where it's supposed to go. Okay, if you're giving it to an organization and you're not giving it personally to someone in their hand, you should ask them and find out what is happening with your zakat fund. Because if you don't do your due diligence and that money doesn't arrive to the recipient, your zakat will not be discharged. You have to do everything in your power to find out whether the money is being delivered to those people or not. If you did everything you could and then it doesn't arrive there, then it is hope from Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your efforts and it will be discharged. Okay, a couple of questions. That one is general. I'll get to that. Mentioned the zakat may be paid for poor students' tuition, but isn't it possible that your zakat may end up to non-Muslim? That's why I said it has to be a Muslim. That's fine. If the institute owner can be a non-Muslim, that's fine. Because you're giving zakat to that child. You're giving zakat to that child. Now it's their ownership. Whatever they do with it now, it could go to anyone. That's fine. Once the zakat fund has changed ownership, it's no longer zakat. Now if that person owes that money, they can do whatever they want with it. Okay, this one is long. I'll get to that question and answer. How about zakat to fundraisers, school, masjids, calamities? Yes, as long as they know you're giving them zakat, you tell them that, and they're going to use it to give into someone's ownership, not for other expenses, then that is fine. You could pay zakat that way. Last couple of points here. If you haven't paid zakat for past years because you didn't know it was owed on certain assets, or you paid for some years you didn't, now you know what it is due, what it is owed on, you have to go back and calculate that zakat. Because zakat is like salat. If you missed it, it doesn't drop. The qada, you have to make up for it. It's still due in your account. Okay? And if you had the chance to pay for it and you don't pay it and you pass away that way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could ask you about it on the day of judgment. Okay, so you need to backdate your zakat to that, whether it be for specific years that you missed or specific assets that you missed. Then you have to go back and make up for that zakat. Can we use zakat money to set up? I already answered this one. Okay. In summary, to pay zakat, you have to take all of your zakatable assets minus your deductibles. What you're left with at that point, you pay 2.5% on that. This is the whole idea of zakat, how it works. The whole zakatable assets, you see what you have. You have cash, gold, silver, investments, stocks, businesses, RSPs, anything you have. You find out how much is owed from there. Minus anything you owe, you have debts, different things you're paying for. You minus that, and then 2.5% on what is left for that. Okay, we are now at 3:53. Our time is almost up. I don't mind going a bit over and answering questions, but before we get to the question and answer period, I'm going to ask all of you, once we have a very large number of attendees today, I will ask you to take out 1-2 minutes. Just give us some feedback about how this workshop was for you. Okay, like I said, this program, Ihsan Intensive, it's a relatively new program. This is only our second course under this. Al-Ihsan has been running for many years. We have many other courses. You can check them out on our website. But this department is relatively new. It started just the first course of this was in February. This is the second one. So if you could go ihsan.ca/feedback, you will see there Ihsan Intensive as one of the courses that you can choose. If you could just a few lines, a few words about what you liked about the program, what you think could have been done better. It is very helpful to us. I'll just wait 2 minutes for you all to do this, and then we'll address all the questions, inshallah. So go to ihsan.ca/feedback, and you can fill out the form there. Just one more minute, and then we will I'll address the question, inshallah. Okay, so I'm going to address the questions from the beginning to now. If someone needs to go at 4 o'clock because that was the scheduled time to end, of course, by all means, you're free to go. If you want to stay back to hear the questions, then you can stay back. All right. Okay. For investment property related to zakat, if you have a house, for example, that is valued at 10,000 and the house has a loan of 8,000, and it's currently rented for 10. Okay, so it's an investment property, meaning someone else owns it. Assuming you're investing in it, if there's a loan of 8,000 on the house, you will pay zakat on 2,000 of that, like you have said. Okay, the rental property, the rent of it will just be added to your own wealth. Okay, if you have another house but parents are living in there, there's no zakat on that. The way we are paid is 60% cash salary and 40% stocks. For example, on January 1, we get payment schedule for the year, and it says that we will get 12 stocks throughout the year, but we won't get these at once. We will get 1 stock per month, and the stock is valued at 1,000. So at the end of the year, we'll have 12,000 stocks. Is there zakat on invested stocks? No. Okay. So you will see up when your zakat date counts, whatever you have received at that point, that's what you will calculate on, not on what you expect to receive. Do we have to pay zakat on children's savings? So children's savings, like we said, that in the Hanafi fiqh you don't have to. The other imams say you do. So to err on the side of caution, it is better that the parents or the guardians pay that zakat on their behalf. But if you follow the Hanafi fiqh, technically no, you don't have to pay on that. If it is in the child's ownership, if you're saving it for them, then it is still yours. You have to pay zakat on it. About car insurance, like I said, so if you're paying monthly car insurance, you should avoid that because they charge you interest, very small amount, but they still charge you interest. In any case, you can only deduct what is the payment due of that month and of past months if it is overdue. Nothing that is upcoming. Right. Someone took a loan from you for 4,000 and your savings hit 0. Does the zakat year reset in that case? No, because technically you still owe that 4,000. Your zakat year will not reset. Because zakat be paid in increments throughout the year or has to be paid lump sum. You could do it in increments. If someone doesn't have the funds at that time, they pay it over time, you could do that. That is fine. Is there a time frame to pay out the zakat once it has been calculated? It should be done right away. That's better. But technically, no, there's no maximum. If you don't do it, it's going to remain due in your account. How much in advance can you pay a portion of the zakat before the actual calculation? There's no limit. As in advance as you want. If I buy an RSP and it will deduct from the income, and if I invest in RSP, do I need to pay zakat? The RSP I bought. Sorry, your question is unclear. If I buy RSP and it will deduct from the income, I think you mean the taxes. And if invest that RSP, do I need to pay zakat on the RSP I bought? So if you could ask Brother Muhammad Hussein, if you could ask that question again, please. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. How can you change your zakat payable date? For example, I last paid it in November, now I want to pay it in Ramadan. You can't change the date unless you lose all your money. So your date will stay the same, but you could pay it in advance. Is it possible to transfer zakat to another city or country? We talked about that. Even if this person owes me, can I pay zakat to him? We talked about that as well. If someone has one TV, cell phone, but no savings, is he eligible for zakat? Yes, as long as they don't have excessive luxury items, they're just living with the basic necessities. Yes, you could give them zakat if they don't have nisab. Then the recipient has to be Muslim. Yes, zakat is only for Muslims. If you have majority gold jewelry and very little silver, do I pay gold or silver calculation? If I have majority gold jewelry and very little silver, it's a good question. There's different opinions on this. I can't answer because it depends exactly how much silver you have. But in general, the caution, to err on the side of caution, combine the value of both and pay zakat on that. Okay. A madrasa provides free education services to its students, to both residents and drop-in students. Food and accommodation is also provided there. This madrasa is run by donations only. Building expenses and maintenance is also through donations. Teacher salaries from donations. Can zakat be given? No. You cannot give zakat to an organization. There is absolutely no exception for that. No matter what they are doing, no matter how good the work they are doing is, zakat. Like, in salat, we say tahara, purity is a condition. If you don't have tahara, your salat is not valid. Transfer of ownership to an individual is a condition like that in zakat. If it doesn't happen, your zakat will not be valid. There's absolutely no exception to that. I have 500 grams gold and 20 grams silver. Okay, yeah. So to err on the side of caution, just combine them both and pay zakat on that. Tomorrow it will be the topic. At what time will it be? Tomorrow it will be the same time, 1 to 4, and the topic will be fiqh of fasting. That will be conducted by Sheikh Nabil Khan, not by myself. But it'll be the same time. It'll be the fiqh of fasting. Okay. Can you please answer this before you close? Madrasa provides free education. Okay, I answered this one. Can one pay the zakat amount to the poor person that can make the person receiving sahib nisab? Can you pay 1,000 to a single person? No, you cannot. Okay, you can't make the person sahib nisab by giving them zakat. Only in the case where they have a debt, then you can pay them a large amount, and because then it won't make zakat due on them. Okay, because the idea is to help them, not to make them have to pay zakat themselves. Instead, you should distribute it to different places. Right? But again, remember, that's not the case where giving this person that much wealth will make them have that much savings. But if they have that many expenses that they need is going to be spent right away, then you could give that. Okay. Jazakallah, hope you glad that you enjoyed it. So it depends on mostly needs. We can pay our zakat. Is that right? I think you're talking about where to give it. Yes, but whoever is more in need wherever they are. Can you pay zakat throughout the year? Yes, you could. You could pay them in payments. Property tax, I didn't go about it. Please describe. Property tax. So, if you haven't paid it for the past year, then you could add it. If your zakat date comes while you owe property tax for that year. Okay, like I know here in Surrey, the property tax bill comes in, I think in June. So say if it's due by the beginning of August. So if your zakat date is in July, at that time you could deduct it. Otherwise you can't. Okay, some students are still raising their hands. I'm not sure why. If you have a question, please type in the question. If a person owns a small business back home and somehow they manage the expenses, can I pay zakat to them? If you're giving it to an individual who doesn't have money, you're saying they have a business, which sounds like they would have nisab. So generally, I would say no, but I would need to know more exact details of that. Are you saying you cannot give zakat to a madrasa? You can't give it for their expenses. If they're taking it on behalf of their students, So technically the money you're giving is going to the student. That you could do. And like I said, like what we do at Al-Ihsan, those students of ours who can't pay their fees and they're eligible, they sign a form saying they authorize us to receive zakat on their behalf. So that means the zakat that we take is actually going into their ownership and then they're giving it to us. So that is fine. You can't give it directly for their expenses. I may have missed zakat payments in the past. How do I calculate how much I need to pay to make up for the miss? We talked about that. You backdate it, see how much you had on your zakat date every year. And if you're estimating, always take a higher amount. Okay, so just in case you have a mistake, you're not paying less. How would you combine the value of both gold and silver? Just add them up. Find out how much your gold is worth, find out how much the silver is worth, add them both together. Say one is worth 2,000, one is worth 1,000. Add them together, you get 3,000, and you pay zakat on that. Can you pay zakat throughout the year? Yes, we mentioned that. How to pay zakat on government tax return? If you're getting money back from the government, your taxes, it's going to go into your money. When your zakat date comes, you pay for zakat on that along with the rest of your wealth. Okay. My business is registered as a company. Zakat is due yearly. A tax receipt is needed by CRA to use corporate funds to pay zakat due for the company. A tax receipt is needed by CRA to use corporate funds to pay zakat due for the company. Is this okay? Also, if the company buys a commercial unit for the use of the company, will zakat be due yearly on the property? So on the property, no, it won't be due if it's for use. Your first part of your question, zakat is due yearly. Okay. A tax receipt is needed. A tax receipt for what? Can you just clarify that? That's not clear. I don't know if I answered the question. Can zakat be held somewhere else upon request of madrasa admin so that it can be used on a monthly basis? Yes and no, because you can't give zakat to the madrasa to use for their expenses. Right? If you gave it to the students and they gave it to the madrasa as their fees, and then the madrasa keeps it separate so they know what the zakat funds are, then they could do that, yes. Corporate tax on capital gain is deductible. Again, if it's owed at the time you pay your zakat, otherwise no. If you know you're going to have to pay the zakat in the future, you can't deduct it from your zakat if your date is before. If I own money in a DCPP, defined contribution pension plan at work, is invested, I don't have access, do I pay 2.5%? Oh, this one came before. If I pay now, how do I calculate that? So you're gonna see. So you said you don't have access. Okay. So you're going to. Let's read that again. I own. Okay, you have the pension plan. You don't have access. It's invested. You don't have access, and it's invested. So you're gonna pay zakat on 27% of 2.5%. Yeah. So let's say the entire amount of your investment is 27,000. You take 27% of that, and you pay 2.5% of that. Okay. Can I pay zakat to my brother-in-law's kids to study Quran studies? Can you give zakat to children? Basically, yes, you could. As long as they don't have wealth of their own, you could give them zakat. If we haven't given previous zakat and can't backdate it, I don't see why you can't backdate it. You just need to see how much money you had at that time. If you don't know for sure, you estimate it and you take a higher amount, and then you pay that zakat that way. If anyone has any more specific questions about backdating zakat, and you want help on that, you can get in touch with us afterwards. Like I said, when I send out the slides, I'll put contact information in the email, and we can help you with that to see exactly how much you owe for that. Can zakat money be used to the eligible madrasa to be used on poor resident students? No, you can't give zakat to the madrasa. It has to go to the students. If the madrasa is collecting zakat and they say that we're going to give this to the students. Not that we're going to use it for our expenses, even if the expenses means the students' food. If they're going to give those funds to the students, that is okay, because they're your agent and they are conveying that, giving that money ahead to the recipients, just like masjids do. Masjids take zakat and they give it to those who are eligible. Okay, I didn't get clarification for this question. But I'm not sure. You could get in touch with me after about the zakat is due yearly and a tax receipt is needed by CRA. It's a bit unclear. You could ask that again, please. Should I pay zakat for my pension plan invested now or when I retire and have full access? It depends. Do you have access now or not? If you don't have access and it's invested, you could wait until you have full access. Or if you want, you could pay now. In any case, if you decide to wait, you will have to backdate it and pay the past years. Right. There's a problem in the calculations. Okay, I'll take a look. It's possible. Typos happen all the time. Okay. Any other questions before we end this? Afsar Mahzoom, you're still raising your hand. If you have a question, please go to the Q&A panel and type in your question over there. Okay, so if there are no more questions, so we'll end it at that. Jazakallah everyone for attending. Like I said, tomorrow will be the Fiqh of fasting at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and that will be conducted by Sheikh Nabil, inshallah. If you want more information on any of our organizations, Al-Ihsan, the National Zakat Foundation, Ask a Muslim, you can visit the website for other programs. Al-Ihsan ourselves, we have many other programs. We are planning a more long-term program about zakat and finances, a 2 to 3 month program. So just you could check our website, check on our Facebook page, Al-Ihsan Institute. All the updates will be posted there. And we have your email. We will send you those updates as well, inshallah ta'ala. Some more questions came in just now. If I made the intention to give sadaqah for Ramadan, can I change my intention for it to be zakat? I haven't paid it. If you haven't paid it yet, yes, you could change your intention. Okay, but when you give it, it has to be zakat. Same thing if you lend someone some money, and then later you decide, okay, you can keep it, that can't be considered to be zakat, because when you gave it, the intention was not zakat. Okay. How to take silver as nisab if mixed assets taking problem 1. You get the value of silver on that day in your country. You see how much it is worth, and then you see what that amount is. So for us, it's about $400, and then you see if your assets are above that or not. Third loan, you said one can't deduct, but if one didn't save it, he has to pay interest. So if they're saving to pay a loan back, yeah. So I answered this already. Yes, if you're saving to pay back a loan, then you have to pay zakat on that money that you are accumulating. No problem. Do you pay zakat al-fitr for the pregnant woman and the kid in the womb? Okay, zakat al-fitr is another topic. It may come up tomorrow in Ramadan, but zakat al-fitr will be due for the pregnant woman, not for the child. Okay, and just as a rule of thumb, to add on to today, anyone who has nisab has to pay zakat al-fitr. Zakat al-fitr. Okay, without going into too much detail on that, the adult male of the house is responsible for the children's zakat al-fitr, not anyone else. So the wife is responsible for her own. She could pay it. She needs to pay it on her own. But if the husband wants to pay it on her behalf, he could pay that for her. Right? But there will be some more details tomorrow in tomorrow's session about zakat al-fitr. Okay, I'll keep it at that. If you do have more questions, like I said, you will have the contact information in the email. You can ask them there. You can also visit our website, submit an inquiry there. You can visit the National Zakat Foundation. They also have a system where you can ask questions about Zakat, and either ourselves or them, anyone will be more than happy to help you with this. Jazakallah again, everyone, for attending, and we hope to see you all back tomorrow for the Fiqh of Siyam portion. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.